Okay, good morning. It's great to be in Bratislava. I can see that there are still some people who will remain in the room. And I'll start with one counterintuitive thinking. Recently, I was invited to speak at one conference, and I came in with my suit and tie, and they told me, no, you should speak behind the lectern. I said, why? Because you have a suit and tie. I said, okay. Therefore, I was found a very flexible organizer. Therefore, they let me speak more directly here in front of you. And while I'm waiting for PowerPoint presentation, yep, that's it. That's probably my favorite explanation of many issues that we discussed today. And you can put quite a few words. You can put the word counterintuitive, messy, ambiguous. And if you follow discussion on digital policy, there are exactly these issues. It is great enabler, but it's also great risk. It provides opportunities, but it provides threats. Now, yesterday with Piotr and Boris, I discussed one interesting book, which is, I'm sure quite a few of you read it. It's Master and Margarita by Bulgakov, Russian author, which was one of the first criticisms of the communist system 50 or 60 years ago. This is the most favorite book of the venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. And if you can recall the narrative of this book, this is probably how it can be described and explained. There are so many counterintuitive and unclear developments that we cannot grasp with the usual linear logic. And digital phenomenon which we are facing currently requires to the large extent analog answers. Now in the next 10 to 12 minutes, what I will try to do, I will try to make some order and to reduce confusion that all of us have and these birds from the illustration. I will focus on geopolitics, geoeconomics, and geoemotions. And I will build on the issues that were introduced by previous speakers, including the GERD. One of the most telling slides was the slide of the top 20 companies. Top 20 companies, you cannot find, if you can recall that slide, one single European company. There are US, Chinese, and one Japanese company at the very end of the list. Now, here is some sort of a challenge for our discussion, if we'll have time for discussion. Is Europe becoming the third world of digital world? And how to prevent Europe from becoming the third world of digital world? At least that slide, which we saw, show that there are serious risks that Europe may become third world of digital world. What does it mean? It will send their data to China, Japan, United States, and in exchange get services. More or less the parallel what's happened with the colonialism in the 19th century. Now, this is one great challenge. Europe is realizing this risk seriously and putting a lot of efforts, including GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, which is going to be one of the major developments in trying to rebuild geostrategically European position in this field. There are three recent statements made by three completely different people from different walks of life, but highlighting the same challenge that we are facing about geopolitics and geostrategy. Stephen Hawking said that artificial intelligence is something, it will be something best that happened or something worse that happened in the human history. He left the verdict completely open. Elon Musk called the United Nations to start regulating autonomous weapons. And good news from the UN, which is usually slow in reaction, they reacted very fast. And as we are discussing, they're negotiating in the UN government group of experts how to regulate autonomous weapons at their meeting in Geneva. They started on Monday. And we will report. By the way, whatever I mention here, it will be supported by annotated presentation where you can get the links to the resources, materials, additional papers. And Vladimir Putin, Gerd already mentioned, he said at the opening of the academic year that probably the country which will master artificial intelligence will master the global geopolitics. Then we have three similar messages on the digital and the artificial intelligence. Now, the first sort of hypothesis of my discussion is that geography is back. Those of you who, like Piotr and me, started very early in digital field, the main message is digital brings the end of geography. Geography is obsolete. We can connect to anyone, anywhere. What's happened in very paradoxical way is that geography returned big time. We are now more anchored in the geography than ever before, through GPS to geolocation to similar tools. And it means once you're anchored in geography, you're anchored into physical life and politics and the space which is shared by governments worldwide. Now, this is extremely important to highlight, return of geography in digital world. Second, well, everybody speaks about that data is the oil of new economy, and I usually wait for The Economist, which is still my favorite sort of type of journalism. They think twice before they write, and they confirm it. Therefore, now it's officially confirmed that data is the oil of the digital world. Those are two assumptions: a return of geography and data as the oil of a digital world. Let us move into geopolitics. If you follow the trace of your data packet, which goes from Slovakia to, let's say, Australia or Japan, you will more or less follow the trace of all the telegraph cable lines that go through the UK. I don't know exactly tracing, but usually it's going through UK, Gibraltar, past next to Malta, Cyprus, Alexandria, Suez, Aden, and then move to the Malacca Bay and moves further. And this is one counterintuitive element related to birds from the first slide. We often think that our experience of digital is virtual, but more than 90%, close to 95% of digital traffic is going through the cables, fiber optic cables. And those fiber optic cables are quite centralized on 24 points, major points worldwide. Most likely, most of traffic from Slovakia will pass Frankfurt, exchange point, Deutsche exchange point in Frankfurt. Amsterdam is a big point, London, New York, San Francisco, Miami for Latin America. Therefore, the vulnerability of global internet is absolutely high, comparing to initial idea of the internet, that it is very decentralized and that the packets will find their way to the end point as long as there is any connection. If you have one cable, then that cable is the only point for communication. Here is the example of Malacca Bay. Most of the Asian communication is like ship routes are going next to the Malacca Bay between Singapore and Indonesia. This is still strategic point, or Suez, or those historical points. Now governments are also realizing, for different motivations, justified, unjustified, that they need to control their cyberspace. Therefore, they're putting various controls, filtering, economic, political, technical, in order to keep as much control of their cyberspace as it is possible. Therefore, it was a geopolitics. The next element is the Geo Economics, which is even more important. Gerd listed the top internet companies. Apple is in their economic power close to, for example, Denmark. And we are speaking about enormously powerful players. The key element in geoeconomics for negotiating, understanding what's going on is this triangle between us, internet companies, and vendors. And the key part is basically this part of triangle where we exchange our data, give our data for so-called free internet services. They're not free. They're provided not against monetary compensation, but they're not free. Around this triangle, European Union is fighting the question of taxation, where you would tax the transaction if there is not exchange of monetary values. Question of consumer protection. Most of the policy issues, digital policy issues, are trying to unpack this triangle here. Some countries are finding new assets, from smartness of their people to this one, which is just the sort of the indication from Montenegro.me. Montenegro makes close to 5 million euros annually on selling different domains on the .me. Follow me, kiss me, love me, buy me, whatever. You can, imagination can go further. Another element which is in a way counterintuitive is that we were taught that digital will decentralize modern economy. As we know, digital is natural monopoly, and it is a centralizing modern economy. Here is a map of Bay Area, where you basically have almost 90% of global internet industry concentrated in the physical space of 40 by 20 kilometers. It is also important to understand for countries who would like to develop their own facilities. Monopolies are natural when it comes to digital field. And European Union, I would say, is realizing it and moving very fast in challenging some of those monopolies. Another geoeconomic element which was discussed by Gerd, but which is extremely profound, is this close circle between artificial intelligence. When we put artificial intelligence, let's say in Tesla car, or any Internet of Things, our fridge, or, he mentioned quite a few examples, that Internet of Thing, car or refrigerator, serves our needs, but it has another enormously important function for the producers. It generates data. It generates big data and provides company with the idea how this tool is used. You cannot have this sort of a bracelet which controls the number of steps without connection to cloud. I try to find one which will essentially connect only to my PC. You cannot connect it because you generate data. And by generating data, you are basically correcting algorithms. And this vicious circle is probably one of the key ways how the modern economy will function. And the first glimpse of it, we heard 1 month ago, 3 weeks ago, when Google's artificial intelligence program managed to beat the previous artificial intelligence system, which managed to beat the world champion in Go. Go is strategic Asian play, sort of Asian chess. Therefore, what they managed to do, they first trained, 1 year ago, they trained a robot. That robot won against the world champion from China. Now they managed to make the system which won the game against the robot. Therefore, that's very interesting vicious circle, economic vicious circle, which will determine developments in the forthcoming period. The third elements are geo-emotions. And geo-emotions related to perceptions, to values, to question of democracy. And we have many discussions in European Union here about fake news or false news, and question how we can regain meaning, truth, understanding in modern societies. And it is going to be probably one of the critical issues in the coming period. What can we do on this journey? In what direction we can move, and what can be done currently? Let me start with current developments. Citizens worldwide, when they are faced with the problem to protect their interests, companies, citizens, they cannot wait for us speakers, presenters, to tell them about dilemmas, opportunities, and chance. They basically go to courts because they have a right to justice. And courts cannot tell them, oh, I'm sorry, we need to study it and establish commission. They have to rule. And what is currently happening, courts are ruling, especially European courts. They ruled on the right to be forgotten. They rule on the privacy shield, on the safe harbor now. They will rule on privacy shield. And we are awaiting one of the major decisions of the European Court of Justice, which will decide if Uber is transportation or communication company. Now, European Union is basically setting European courts currently, and European Commission increasingly, and other bodies, is setting a policy of what Gerd mentioned, regaining some sort of human aspect of digital space. We have currently G2, we have China and the United States, and there is of essential importance that we get G3, that we get European Union as another, or G192, whatever. But G3, European Union, can rebuild and regain this element of humanity which is increasingly missing in these developments. Therefore, courts are filling the gap. Companies are very worried about the court's decision, especially European Court of Justice, and this is where currently, at this moment, digital policy is happening. It triggers some companies to say, hey, we have to do something. Judges are okay, they study, they ask computer specialists, but they make suboptimal decisions. They don't understand all pro and cons and all balancing acts. Therefore, Brad Smith last week spoke at the UN. I'm based in Geneva, at the UN in Geneva, and he basically called for establishment of Digital Geneva Convention. And here are the 6 points of Digital Geneva Convention. His message was, WannaCry was what was a Battle of Solferino when the Red Cross was later on established. The WannaCry is Solferino of digital age. And he thinks that we have to have something like a Red Cross for digital policy. And he suggested few points: no targeting of tech companies, assist private sector, report vulnerabilities, exercise restraint, commit to non-proliferation limits offensive operations. Here is a complexity of data governance. You have to deal with technological, economic, security, law, and human rights aspect, among others. It is multidisciplinary issues, and it has to be negotiated carefully in what we call internet social contract. You know that Jean-Jacques Rousseau was born in Geneva. He wrote a book on social contract, and we need now, by relying on the wisdom of thousands of thinkers from ancient China, ancient Greece, and the recent thinkers of enlightenment, we have to see how to conclude a new social contract which will address basically opportunities of the digital era and also deal with the threats and risks. Quite a few discussions are happening in Geneva. This is where my office is, in Geneva. If you happen to be in Geneva, just let me know. And we can give you intro what's going on in this realm where more or less 50% of the digital politics is currently happening in the radius of 3 kilometers from this building. Don't, and keep wondering, keep being healthy confused. I know that I'm speaking to the audience like I'm coming from Eastern Europe. We have one great advantage. We are immunized to the ideologies. We can detect ideologies. And there are quite a few ideologies happening currently in different realms. Therefore, think critically, be open to the counterintuitive, and think positively as much as it is possible. Thank you.